Hi Blender fans and welcome. In today's tutorial what we're going to be doing is covering how to block out something to make a model in Blender. Now this we're going to be making a ray gun.
Hi Blender fans and welcome once again to BlenderTC. And don't forget, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Let's begin.
So I'm going to press the 1 on my 9-figure keypad just to actually look from the front, and now I'm going to add in a reference image. Right, the reference image can be found on my community tab, so if you want you can actually download this so you can actually follow along with the tutorial. So we're going to actually add a reference image, and the reference image is one that I created, Raygun BTC for Blender tutorial. Right, so we've got our ray gun, so I'm just going to zoom in on this. I think you call it a diesel punk style ray gun. So what we're going to do is actually block this out. So simply we're going to actually scale the cube, so we're not going to get rid of it for a change, and we're just going to move it up there. If we actually press the full stop key on our 9-figure pad, we can actually scale this down so we can see the tube here. As you can see, we've got a ray gun here. Let's begin. So I'm just going to scale the cube along the X by pressing S and X and just scaling this up. That's the top side. What you can do is add in another cube, scale this down. Now the aim of this is to actually have the outside of this showing on the outside of our cube. So I'll just scale this down until you've got a bit of a line above and a bit of a line below, and same as above, we're just actually blocking out this gun. So what we're going to do is hit the tab key to go into edit mode. You've got point select, line select and face select, so we select the actual face, look from the front by pressing the 1 on our number pad again, and I'm just going to this over to about there just before it starts to change shape, and on the back side here and X until it just goes to that line there. Right, as you can see, the image is actually halfway through our gun. So what I'm going to do is actually select the image and then move it into the background. So out of edit mode, select the image, background, because we're going to have that in the background of our image. So then if we actually hit this, which is our X-ray mode, we can actually see our item through it just like that. So we've got that round. I'm just going to add in another cube, scale this down, and this time we're going to actually move it over here onto our gun chamber. This is the one where the actual power is created for our gun, or it is in my concept idea for how this thing works. As you can see, we've got a safety catch here. So selecting your cube. Right, so you're not accidentally selecting the image all the time, what we can do is actually go into our filters up here, and we can enable this. This arrow will then appear on here, and if you want something not to select, as in the image like that, you can actually just toggle this on and off. So now I cannot click the image. So looking from the front, I'm just going to select this cube and select face select, and I'm going to extrude and then scale just to follow the actual pattern. E and S, E and X, and extrude along the X, E and X, and I'm just following this round so the outside of my image is on the outside of this. I'm going to take that to about there and then scale this down to about there. I'm going to zoom in on there because I think it's overlapping my image, so I'm just going to G and X just to move it back so it falls on the interior. Right, going to the X-ray mode, and I'm going to extrude this along the center. Just like most guns, it's got a barrel. So next we'll look at this, and I'm going to press the full stop on my number pad just to zoom in on it, and E and X, and I'm just going to, there's a line there, so if you actually put 3 loop cuts together, then that will make a sharp edge when we subdivide. So any sharp curves, just put 3 together and this will make them sharp. I'm selecting face select again, and E and X, and E and X. Just going to put 2 together there because I just want a less pronounced area, and then I'm just going to E and X again, and I think I'll scale this up, scale, so it follows our general shape. As you can see, we've got our gun. I'm just going to take it on X-ray just so I can see through the image, but as you can see, we've got our round barrel. This is like a flat edge that goes along the top of it and actually attaches to our sight, so I'm not worried about that too much at minute. So E and X, E and X, and E. So E and X. And as you can see, what we need to do is actually drag these up just to actually match our shape. I'm just going to drag these up like this. So I'm taking this back out of X-ray mode because I'm selecting things I don't want to really select. So G and Z, and as you can see, I'm just following this along. G and Z, G, E. Right, following this in general. So it looks like that there has got a bit of a rim. So what I'm going to do is actually press Ctrl and R, and move this down here, G and X, and I'd like this to actually show through. So what I'm going to do is actually put a bevel here, and I'm going to put a bevel in, Ctrl and B. As you can see, we've got this bevel. I prefer to do it this way because you've got more control, so I can actually control the distance there, and if you want more than one segment in it, you can actually change it there, but we only want one segment. So with that selected, what we can do now is go back out of X-ray mode and then extrude it. So extrude along normals. Well, you can only extrude along normals if you've got face select and extrude along the normals. So I'm just going to scale this up just to make that general shape. And on the end of here, what I want to do is I'd like to actually fetch this back. So GG will actually allow it to move back on itself. And I'm going to E and X just to actually scale it out and just follow this general shape by pressing scale. Scale. And I'm just following the image. If I zoom in on this, you can see E and X and S to scale, E and X, S to scale, and E and X, and E and X again. And I'm just going to scale this down because I just want like a Dalek shaped to about this there. And I'm going to extrude this along the normals again. But instead of out, I'm going to send it in slightly. Extrude along the normals again, just like that. So that's going to be our gun sight. So I'm just going to extrude this. Fat E, and then scale in itself. And then I'm going to extrude along the normals. Just a little bit, just to get that sharp edge. Straight along the normals. And extrude along the normals. The reason I'm doing this is that I want that kind of shape to it. So extrude along the normals. I'm going through my image, so I'm just going to go into X-ray mode just to show you what we're doing. Right, the reason we're actually doing this is because when you subdivide this, it's going to actually average out all these loops, and it's going to turn this into a circular thing. By adding actual loops on the ends of these, when it does subdivide them, it's not going to change it too much. So let's select this edge because we haven't done this edge yet, and zoom in on it. As you can see, it changes shape there, so I'm just going to GG just to move it on itself until it goes to about there. And as you can see, we're just blocking this out by pressing E and X and scaling it up. And then I'm going to scale it up like we did before. E and X. Just keeping on the inside of this. Just scale this whole thing down. And I'm just going to E and X and G and Z just to move it up. So I'm just following these lines. E and X. And as you can see there, we've gone a little bit too far. So GG just to take it back. And as you can see, we're actually going down the outside of our image. So I'm just going to actually going to off of X-ray mode, zoom in on it by pressing the plus, and I'm just going to actually select this whole edge by pressing the Alt key down and pressing the left mouse button, which then will allow me to actually just scale this down. And the aim of the game is to get this inside of our image, and as you can see, we're roughly following our image. So I'm just going to E and S to scale. Seems to go out to the top of this, so I'm just going to G and Z until it just moves further up. E and X. As you can see, I've not gone far enough up there, so I'm going to drag that top face by selecting it, and G and Z just to take it up like that. And I'm going to take that one down slightly just to actually G and Z, just to match up with this. And like we say, we're blocking everything out that's round first, and E and X. E and X, just to actually move it over there. And what I'm going to do is add a loop cut, Control and R, oops, Control and R, and GG just to move it in on itself, and then scale this up. But we can actually move it to the end of this because it's all round. G and X just to move it up there. So basically we're actually starting to make the gun, and this is actually what you call blocking out the actual gun, but I'll show you some neat tricks that you can do at the end to actually make this actually work. Pressing the 1 key to look. Yeah, that looks about right. So I'm just going to select this bottom face and E and Z, sorry, to take it down. There we go. Just to make this kind of shape. And maybe scale it up a little bit. There we are. So we got this face, and I believe that's looking quite good. Looking from the front, looks like that it actually goes down into the item there, so I'm going to extrude along the normals just to take it. Oops. So it's just go out of X-ray mode, and I think we might be just actually selecting the wrong face. So E and Z just to move it down, just to make that kind of shape. So that there, it looks to me like it's an actual flat area, so we'll actually create that once we've actually subdivided these later on. So you got that's round up there, so what we're doing is actually making all the round shapes first. So go to this one, out of edit mode, select the bottom cube, back into edit mode, and we can actually select that face. E and X just to move it over. I'm just going to scale that up because it looks like it does scale up slightly. GG just to move it back on itself. Just scale it up slightly. Whoops, that's not slightly. And GG just to move it back on itself. So looking at this, we're going to actually extrude along the X, then scale it down. Pressing the full stop key will allow us to actually zoom in on things. G and Z just to move it so it's back central, and then scale it up slightly just so it follows the shape. Just going to add another loop cut into here because I think it needs it just because of shape differences, and G and Z just to move that up there just so we got that kind of shape, and G just to move it down there just to give it that kind of look. And 1 E and X, E and X. Sorry, I just caught my mic then. Now here we've got an actual plug going up, so we're just going to add in a simple cube again, scale it down, and some things we'll actually subdivide, some things we won't, but we might add bevels onto something because things with a bevel look quite good, in fact look very good, just when you're adding detail. and just scale this right down. And I think this is going to be quite thin, so scale along the Y like that. And I'm just going to scale it along the X so it actually fills this kind of shape. G and Z, bring it slightly into itself. And what I'm going to do is add, with all selected, A to deselect all. In fact, I've actually left the cube attached to that, so I want to separate that off. So select the cube, press the L key, and P, separate by loose parts, which then will actually put it onto individual objects again. So into edit mode, just going to select this cube, and I'm just going to add a bevel to it. Control B on all edges, just like that, and just make it 3, just to give it that kind of shape to it. So we've got all the round parts done, apart from this here and the back there. But what we're going to do is we're going to make that into one piece. So first of all, let's just block it out again. So add in a mesh, the cube, scale it down, G, and scale it. And I'm just going to move it more or less into the center of this, like that, and just scale it along the X until it's the desired shape, G and X. And what I can do to actually get the shape I want, we can actually just do what we did before. So we're going to actually go into edit mode, select the outside edge by pressing the Alt key, and then I'm just going to scale this up. So scale, Control X. So what I did there is scale and Control X. So it excludes the X dimension from the scaling. And we can actually just take this to the end, G and Y, G and X, take it to the end, scale this down so we get the general shape, and GG just to move it in on itself, just so we've got that dome part, and we're going to change the shape of this, Control and R, and S to scale, just so it actually roughly follows the shape we want, and S to scale, S to scale. So we're generally making that dome shape, zoom right in on it, and I'm going to make a sharp edge here, E and X, just to actually do that, scale it, and it appears that it's got a rim round there, so I'm just going to E and X, just to take it and make that kind of shape. So we've got that kind of shape, and then all we need to do is carry this back to E and X, to there, GG, just to move it back there, and I think I'll add in a mesh. In fact, that there, if you look on X-ray mode, is a sharp bevel, yeah, and so is that one, or a sharp edge. So what we're going to do is go into line select, press the Alt key down, select this line, which of course selects it all the way round, and then Control and B, which is bevel. Keep it at 3 bevels because that'll add a sharp edge. If you look, you've got 3 lines there. Same with this one, Control and B. 1, 2, 3. In fact, 2 will do actually, so it'll make it a little bit softer, and we've got that general shape. So next, let's just add in that other cube out of X-ray mode, mesh cube, G, and scale it down until it's the right kind of size. And I'm just going to move this over here. Scale it down. Same again, we're following that kind of shape, so we're just going to generally get the shape again. In fact, G and Z, just to move it more central, and into edit mode, and E and X, and E and X, and scale it up, E and X, scale it up, E and X, E and X, scale it down, E and X, and scale it down. And what we can do is we've got like a little thing there that's coming out, so we're just going to actually add a bevel on this. So select, press the Alt key down, Control and bit of bevel, just to actually add it. I don't want 3, I want 2. Bit wider than that. Don't know why it's done 3. Let's take it down to 1. Just take it that little bit wider. I'm just trying to actually mimic this, so let's just go into X-ray mode. And I'm going to move that over slightly, G and X. And extrude along faces, so select face select. Extrude along the normals. So I'm making that kind of shape. And put another loop cut in here. GG just to move it across a little bit. Control bevel. Make it about the same width. Or slightly wider, it's up to you. And with face select, extrude along normals. Like that. And scale it slightly down because I think it's a little bit too big. And just so this works, I'm just going to actually extrude this out. E and X. E and X. And E and X. Just so it actually gets a good end point. So as you can see, we've got all our circular bits done apart from this top one. So as you can see, we've got all of these done apart from our top one. And we'll do that in a second. And the only round part we've got left now is this part up here. And as you can see, that's and here we've got 2 rings that you look through the outside through. So let's just do this one bit. So same as before, we're just going to get a cube, scale it down, G to move it up into this position, and we'll go to the widest point, which is there. Press the 1 key to zoom in on our cube, and we'll scale, just move this into place, and scale it up. I go on face select, select this edge, and E and X just to move it to there. And we're doing this just the same as we've done all the other circles. E and E just to move it there. And I'm going to select this ring just there by pressing the Alt key down, just scaling this up. Put a loop cut in there and scale it down. Loop cut in here. Pressing the Alt key to select this line. Control R. Scale it down. And just extrude this out slightly. Extrude along the normal. Extrude along the normal because I want this to be the sharp end of our shape. Select the front edge and extrude, and I'm just going to move this up G and Z just so it's in the center of here, and scale it, and G and Z just to get our this kind of shape. Control R, and I'm going to select that top face with line select, and just go back to there. And G and Z just to move it up. And one more loop cut because I want this to be quite sharp. And G and Z. Just because to get that kind of shape there. And now select the front face. Press the 1 key to look from the front, and E. Like that. And we're just following the shape. E and X. G and Z, just to move it up. E and X. E and X. And scale it up. Just as before. Scale. And then just simply follow the shape, E and X, just to take it to the end here. And as you can see, we've got this thin hindsight that's going up. So I'm just going to press and make a loop cut there. And E. And rotate. And G, just to take it so it follows the shape. And rotate it along the Y. And G. G, then X, just to move it down to here. Now I'm just going to scale this right down. Just making that rough shape, but I want this to be quite a bit thinner past there, so I'm just going to select this front face here and Control and plus, and then scale it along the Y to give that kind of shape. Maybe a little bit thinner. Scale on the Y. Just follow this round. Selecting that front face. And G just to move that one edge. And just to finish this off, I'm just going to scale this up like that. E, and then scale it down. And G just to make that kind of shape like that. Right then, I think this front edge is actually in the wrong place, so I'm just going to check my image and G just to move it until it falls into place there. So as you can see, we've actually made all the parts on our guns that are actually round. So let's start to make some of the other parts of our gun. Right, so I mean, you might think that that looks pretty naff and not very good at all, but because we made all these round, I'll just show you a quick tip. If we actually select all these items that we've actually created so far, like so, and then join them together. Let's have a look, just make sure I've got everything selected, like that. Then join them all together so it's on one thing. So I just actually call this our gun. All joined together. As you can see, there's nothing left on there, but we've got all these bits and bobs that we've actually made, which mainly are our tubular items that look like tubes. So to actually see them how we would want them when we've got our finished gun, we're just going to add a subdivision surface to that, and as you can see, we'll take this up to 3, shade smooth, and we've got all the parts of our gun so far that are that kind of shape. So let's just switch that back off, Alt and Z, and then into edit mode, select all and P, just to separate all our loose parts. You can see all the different parts of our gun have now separated, just like that. So we've got this so far, so let's start adding some detail. The only thing that we haven't done is the actual stock of our gun, and we're going to do that now quickly. So do the gun, the stock of the gun. Right, the stock of the gun is quite narrow because it's got to be held by an hand. So let's just scale this on the Y, just so it's about that kind of shape. Our cube, scale it down, G to there, full stop to zoom in. I'm just going to rotate this on the Y. So what I'm doing is just following the angle of this, rotate on the Y until it's the right angle. So just put it slightly above our line, G, because we want it to actually pick up the textures of our gun. So scale it down until it's the right width of our gun there, and then we'll select this top face. I'm just going to G just to move this down, rotate it. In fact, let's just follow this, G, scale it down slightly so it comes on the inside of our gun, and we're just going to extrude and rotate as necessary, like that. Making sure that we are actually keeping on the inside of our image, like this. So E, rotate slightly, G, E, take it up there and rotate it, and G just to move it into place, and E, extrude in again, rotate, select that face there, and I'm just going to move it out so it actually follows our shape. Make a loop cut there, just scale it out. Select the front face, and G, select this face up here, and G. As you can see, this is quite a thin edge on the front edge of here, so I'm just going to actually scale this down to match. Scale on the Y, and E, rotate, scale, and G just to move it into place. I'll put one more loop cut. Oops, Control Z just to undo that. Control Z to undo that. Put one more loop cut and just finish it off just about there. So we've got our actual stock of our gun. The only thing is I think that needs to go up. G just to move it up to there. I'm just going to select these two top faces. Just E, just actually put it through to about there. So we've got our gun there, and if we add our subdivision modifier to this, we should have something that looks a bit like a stock. Let's have a look. Maybe put a loop cut. Maybe move this one out slightly, so it'll go on line select, and G. So we've got all our parts of our gun. So if I add a subdivision modifier to this now, and take it up to 3, as you can see, we've got the rough shape of our gun, but because we haven't actually done multiple loop cuts at the bottom of here, shade smooth this, it distorts the shape of our gun. So I'm just going to add some more loop cuts in here, which will then sharpen it. And we can actually just roughly shape these by moving them and G just to move them like that. So as you can see, we've now got the actual stock of our gun, and we'll start adding detail to this. So I'm just going to join all these together. And of course, because I clicked on that one first, the actual subdivision modifier that was attached to this handle is now attached to every other part, just like that. So as you can see, we're quickly and easily getting the shape of our gun. And now what we need to do is make the actual, this bit here, the back of the gun, and of course the flat and the trigger. So as always, let's take our cube. And G, as you can see, the whole gun has been made from the cube, and there's only a few other shapes we're going to actually use to actually make the actual full gun. As you can see, that's a tiny little guard, and what we'll do is actually wrap this all the way around here, so we're making our trigger guard, and the actual part of the trigger guard will just embed itself into here. So press the tab key to go into our trigger guard, and E and X, just following our line. Select the front face, E and G just to follow this shape round. Whoops a daisy, I've gone on to something weird there. And G just to move it round, scale it up, and I'm going to follow this all the way round this trigger guard. So E, I want it to be a similar thickness, so G, E, G, rotating as I go, G, E, E, rotating just to make this shape. Just going to scale this up slightly because it's slightly thicker metal, and just rotate it so it matches to that, and then extrude it all the way into here, E, E. Because we don't need to actually see the actual trigger guard, so you're embedding it in the other shape because it's actually unseen detail, but doing it the way we've done it actually makes things look quite real. Now, to actually extrude along the other edge, what I'm going to do is actually select all these edges here, like that, and like that. And I'm just going to extrude it. So E and X, just to extrude it until it follows that pattern. Now I've done that, we only need to extrude different parts of this, so you actually just select the parts you wish to extrude by holding the shift key down. I'm just going to extrude this. Oops, I needed to go one higher there. E and G, just following the pattern, just scale it down slightly, and G just to move it into place. Looking on X-ray mode, we'll see if we're actually following the actual edge, and as you can see there that we're actually going into mid-air, so I'm just going to add a loop cut there, select this edge on the base, I'll go back out of X-ray mode because it makes it really hard to see sometimes, and G just to move it up so it follows our line, select that front edge, and G just to move it on like that. So I'm just following the shape of the underside of the gun. So same again, we only want to actually extrude the actual parts that were actually part of the gun. So make sure you've got them all selected, and E, oops, done it again, just select that, and then extrude along the X. And I'm just going to scale this down and just move it down until it's in the desired spot, and now I'm going to actually scale along the X to 0 because I want to make these all vertical. So scale X 0 on face select, and we'll just extrude this until it gets to the end of our gun. Scale them down, E, scale it down, and as you can see we've got that. We need to make the trigger obviously, which we can do quite easily just now. So add in the mesh, and we're going to add in another cube, scale it right down. And as you can see, most of the things are actually made in our scene. Scale, just so it goes in the right place. They're actually made from our cube. So it's nice to make everything from a cube, and it's just a good exercise in learning how to actually use Blender. E, G, scale, E, and X. This is another round object, I suppose. The trigger, and because we're actually just following the actual shape of the trigger, scale, rotate, E, scale. See, I'm letting the image actually follow it all the way around. Scale. As you can see, the trigger is going to be a little bit too wide. So what we'll do is actually select the old trigger and scale on the Y, which is along the green line, to make it a thin trigger. And then add the subdivision modifier. Now, because these are actually flat-edged items here, what I like to do is actually add a bevel to the outside of these. So I'm just going to select the outside, like that, and selecting the edge all the way around. But these other items are making this a bit hard to see, so then we actually use a special key called the hide key. And we can actually hide the things that we don't want to actually interfere with our model, just so we can actually hide. So select that, press the Alt key down, we'll actually select the line. Holding the Shift key down, we'll actually select the other line. So as you can see, I'm actually just going round here, holding my Shift key down, and what I'm going to do is actually select all the outside edges of this. Just making sure you've got all the outside edges selected, because what we're going to do is add a bevel to this. So with all outside edges selected like that, we can add a bevel. Control and B will actually attach a bevel, and you can make it as wide or as shallow as you want, like that, with as many edges as you want. And I'm just going to pick 3 there, just to actually add the edges to my shape. And then just to finish it off, I'm going to add a subdivision modifier to it, like that, just to smooth things out, and just to take that up to about a level of 2. In fact, we'll take everything up to 3. Alt and H will make everything reappear. Alt and H. And as you can see, our gun is starting to take shape. Right, the new details that we're going to add onto this, I am going to actually mainly use a cylinder for these. So let's start actually adding the different bits to make the actual cylinder. There's only one other part I want to do, which is this here. And in fact, let's just quickly do it. So yeah, just bear with me, and I just might speed this up a bit, but it's using the same principle. You know, add mesh cube. So what we're going to do is we made that about that thickness, so we're going to actually start to model this. So I'm just going to hide the actual gun butt, and I'm just going to select this, then press the tab key, and with our cube selected, we're going to actually start making this. So G, I'm just making this go into here because I don't want this to actually pose many details to it. So I'm just going to extrude this and then just follow it round and rotate it. So this one I want to keep the same thickness all the way round if I can, and we can actually alter that later on. E, because obviously it's actually thicker than this loop there, and rotate this round. But what we can do is we can actually simply just Just following this shape, rotate it back round, and E and S to scale, so it follows the shape, and rotate, and G, and E, and rotate round, and G. And then select it like that, and scale it along the X, the Y. Just rotate it, scale it down, G to move up, just to about there, and scale, and E, just to actually make it go along here, and E, and rotate it, because we've got a lot of hidden detail in this, and rotate it, or in our gun, just going to move it down to about here, scale in the Z, like that, and G, just following our shape, rotate, GG, just to move it up there, scale in the Z, and rotate, and G, just to move down. So making some of the detail of our gun here. Same again with the bevels, we're going to actually select these outer edges, just to actually Control and B, just to fetch our bevel up, keep it at 3, and narrow bevel, like that. This means when we actually add the actual subdivision modifier in a second, like that, keeps things nice and sharp on these edges. Shade smooth just to keep it like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this outside edge here and extrude it, and extrude it again. Because this, of course, is again hidden detail. Control R, just add a loop cut there. And I think I'd like to move that. Now I've added the subdivision surface modifier, I think I'd like to actually move that this way a little bit. But like I said, now we're actually adding a bit of detail. So as you can see, we're adding bits of detail into our model just to make it look pretty. So what you can actually do is actually select this loop here and grow the selection. And then scale it on the Y, which will make it thinner or thicker depending on which way you want to take it. Like that. And scale on the Y until it is the desired effect. Oh, that looks quite cool actually. Scale on the X, just scale on the Y just to get a little bit more thickness. So the last little bits that we need to actually hide is the little sight up there, which we'll do just about now. We also need to actually make this bit here, which we'll do by extending this across the ways. But we can go into edit mode, select face select. And I think I'd like this to be flat as well. So if we actually Control and B and add a bevel to this, that's better. Control and B. So I want this to be a flat section. So as we say, you've changed a tube into an actual flat section just by adding a bevel to it. And we're going to use this, which is we're going to use the proportional editing just to actually move this into place and rotate it. And that was the influence ring that I just changed the shape of. A couple of loop cuts so it follows the shape that we've actually done. Like I say, a couple of loop cuts like that, just so we can shape it slightly. And of course, to make this into a sight on there, what we need to do is add these 2 rings. I'm just going to scale this one loop cut here up here because I want it to scale along the Y like that. So I've got a position that my sights can actually sit on, like that. And simply we're going to add in a couple of rings, and these are going to be, mostly we're going to actually be using cylinders for the next bits of detail. So I'm just going to actually load a simple cylinder, scale it in the Z, like that, rotate it on the X by 90, look from the front. I'm just going to get this into more or less the center of that. Go into X-ray mode so we can see, put the center in the center and scale it down. So we're just adding bits of detail now. So G and X, and G and Y, just make sure we're still centered. Just scale it down, just so we can actually centralize it before we make it slightly bigger. Scale on the Y, scale Y, just to make it slightly wider. And then what we're going to do is actually just scale that down with it all selected. Control and B, Shift and D just to duplicate that object, and G and X just to G and Y just to move it over. So what we're going to do now is actually line it up with our sight, just about there. G and X and G and Y, just to actually make our sight. So if you're actually holding this gun, you'd actually just sight it with these two rings and the sight there. And if you want to actually shoot it at a distance, you would use the actual laser here, the button for which is actually sat down here near the trigger guard. One button would be your safety and the other one would be to actually switch that laser on and off. In my mind, that is. So add in a mesh, and we're going to add in a cube. Scale it down till it's tiny. And G, we're going to move it up here. And I don't know what this bit is. I just thought it looked good on the back of the actual gun. So I suppose it could be a cocking trigger or something, but I just didn't have anything really in mind for it. I just thought the actual little bit of detail on the back looked good, that's all. So rotate. I'm just going to switch this off into edit mode. Select that face, scale it down, and just E. Rotate. G, rotate, E, E, E. Let's say it's just a little circular part, so add modifier, subdivision modifier. I haven't really got a use for it. And lastly, what we're going to do is add in another cylinder there, but we're going to actually shape this cylinder. So I'm just going to move it G and Z up in the air, and we'll just zoom in on it like this. So we want to actually shape the cylinder, because what I want it to do is make these little thin things that are actually on this cylinder there. So let's just actually select this, and we're going to select the outside edge only. So holding the Alt key down, we just select the outside edge. And then what we'll use is we'll use a thing called checkered deselect, like that, which actually will select a checker pattern, and we're going to extrude this along the normals just to make this kind of shape. Add a loop cut close to the top on that side. Add a loop cut close to the bottom on the other side. And then we're going to add in this subdivision modifier using our spanner or wrench to make that kind of shape. Bit of distortion on the top, but that will work in our favour. But if you want no distortion, all you've got to do is select this ring, extrude, then scale, extrude, then scale, and that just becomes a lot cleaner. Extrude and scale, extrude and scale. There we are. And then rotate this along the Y by 90, and we'll scale this down. Shade smooth, and G. Just move it into place. G. Scale it down a bit. Scale it up. G. Want some of these edges to be a little bit sharper on here, so I'm just going to Control and R just to add a loop cut, and GG just to actually sharpen them up. I'd like it to actually go round this slightly as well. So selecting this face, E and S to scale, S to scale, and G and X just to move it in like that. I like to expand this round there just like it does in the drawing, so we're going to select this bit here, go into edit mode. See, it's getting quite hard to actually see things here, so what I'm going to do is actually get rid of the subdivision modifier, because it just makes it a bit more complicated to actually find things, if you know what I mean. So, and we'll add it back in just in a second, and extrude along the normals, because I want this to encompass this completely like that, and I'd like it to be quite well defined. So I'm just going to add some loop cuts there, and then add my subdivision modifier in again just to see what it looks like. I mean, the other thing you can do is actually just change that to simple, so you can actually just flick between the actual one and the other like this. So simple, you see it on the outside like that. So I'm just going to scale this up because it's still not correct. Just like that, and scale it down in the Z slightly. Just, yeah, that's it. I think I like that a lot better now, and my gun nearly is finished, apart from adding little bits of detail, which we'll do now. So I'll quickly do that. I'm just going to add in a mesh, and I'm going to add in a cylinder, rotate it on the X by 90. So as you can see up on there, just put it into X-ray mode. See, you've got some kind of button up there, so I'm just going to make the button and scale it down until it's at about the right place. Scale, yeah. X-ray off. Now we're going to select either edge here. I suppose that could be an adjustment wheel there on my drawing. Let's let me get rid of this out of the way. Keeps getting in the way. Just move it a bit further back. G and Y, and deselect it again. So adding bits of detail. Scale on the X, on the Y. In fact, select both sides. E and S to scale it down. Scale it along the Y just to make that short sort of shape. And then I'm going to E and S, and E and S, scale on the X, scale on the Y, just to make that kind of shape. Shade smooth, scale Y, shade smooth. There we go. So a lot of the fine detail is actually going to be exposed by the texture, but a lot isn't as well. And that's what we're actually doing, just adding bits of detail. And we're adding bits of detail with cylinders and things, and just generally we're adding rings, add a torus. And with this you can actually change the way it is, and change its thickness or number of segments, and you can actually change the major and the minor radius just to make it thin like that. Rotate on the X by 90. I'm just going to make this little ring down here, zooming in. It's like a little rope ring, I think, just on a little thing where you might hang your gun up, I suppose, from it. It's just a little rope ring and a little triangular hanger there, which I'm going to make out of this. E, and just pull it down. Scale along the Y and G and Z just to move it down there. I'm just going to scale it on the X to make it a little bit wider to go through our rope ring. See, there we are. Right, so most of our detail is actually done on the gun, and you can actually keep tweaking this for absolutely hours, and I will show you the actual finished product. I'm going to add an HDRI into this, so environmental texture, open, just pick one that you like the look of. Most of the one I've got from Polyhaven, and we'll just pick one that's quite reflective or something. Let's pick one with some trees in it and things like that. So when we actually go into our render, we should have actual HDR lighting like that. I don't want it to show up in the viewport, so I'm just going to actually go into the rendered settings, into film, and then just go into transparent. So we've got our gun, and as you can see, it's looking quite good. So all we need to do now is just quickly add our texture to this. And because we can actually see the outside of our gun all the way around our texture, oh, I forgot one little bit, which is this this power ring. But in fact, let's just quickly add that in. And the power ring is just actually made from a cylinder yet again, so mesh. And I'll make it in large scale first, just to actually show you what this actually looks like. So add in sugar. Let's go out of edit mode. Add in a mesh, and the mesh we're going to actually add in is a cylinder again. But we're going to add some bits of detail to this now, because as you can see, if we actually look at our concept drawing there, it's like a cylinder that's actually been shaped, and that's what we're going to actually do. So just bear with me. So G, and we're going to rotate it till it's at the same angle as the actual gun butt. There we are. And then scale it right down, and G just to move it into place. In fact, I'm going to scale it on the Z. Pressing Z twice will actually do it to the actual model itself. And I'm just going to rotate this round. Go on X-ray mode so we can actually see things, and let's just start shaping it. Oops. Take it to solid view. Select that face. Just going to extrude that to about there. Scale it down to the shape. Control R. Scale it down until it follows the shape. Select this edge with pressing Alt so it follows. And this is the power cell on the bottom of the actual gun. So this is like the ammunition for it, because this fires a laser or a plasma charge, depending on which you've got actually in the gun itself. Scale it down. GG. I'm just going to add a couple of loop cuts in here. I'm going to actually select, pressing the Alt key, and extrude along normals. Just move them into place like this. Added some loop cuts to actually sharpen things up. And just add bits of detail, however your fancy takes you for this bit. Scale that up. There we are. So we've got the power cell that actually fits into our gun. Yeah, slightly changed the design there, but it still actually falls in the actual silhouette of our gun, so we can actually still add the textures. Shade smooth it, just like that. So with our gun complete, I think there's some little bits that actually annoy me slightly. One is there on the actual gun butt. I think it needs to actually go up into this chamber just to support it. So you can just E and Z just to actually move it into place like that. And you just keep looking at your gun and you think, which bits don't look right or which bits look wrong. And you just can't actually keep tweaking it to your heart's content. But there you have it. You've got yourself quite a cool looking ray gun, and all we need to do now is add the texture. So for this, I'm going to actually apply all the actual everything that we've got added on. So I'm just going to actually apply all these modifiers. So I'm just going to apply them all. I mean, you can just actually right, anything with a modifier, I'm just going to actually apply them. Just to actually finish my gun off, because I want the texture to wrap around it better, and this is the best way of doing it. And then what you can do is to actually reduce the detail at the end, is actually add a unsubdivide, which will reduce your actual topology. You know, because at the minute this has got quite high topology. As you'll see, once we've applied all these and we actually go into edit mode just to actually have a look at the topology. It's not too high for most computers though, but if you had a lot of things like this in for instance, a game, it'd be just too big for the actual computer to run it reasonably. Well, at the moment anyway, but computers keep getting faster and faster. Right then, so have we got anything left with subdivision? I think that's everything. So look, stepping through them, looking for any that still have a modifier attached to them, stepping through them all. Oh, what's that there? Got a transform modifier. All right, that's on the empty. So we've got this, and we can actually just join these all together now. We're just selecting them, and we're going to actually just join them together. Join. So quick move of my gun just to see if there's anything that's left behind, and yes, there is this that. So just get that and join. And there you have it. You've actually made yourself quite a nice gun. But what we haven't got is we haven't got a texture attached to that. And because we've actually gone on the inside of our texture, we can actually add the texture to our gun from our image. So I'm just going to actually select our image, and I'm going to get rid of it. So select this and just delete the image. So we've now got our gun. If we add a bit of metal sheen to this, let's just add a material. So select your gun, add a material. In fact, let's get rid of all materials. Now add a material. I'm going to add a bit of shine to this because I want it to be a bit shiny, like that, and take the roughness right down, like that. So as you can see, it's now getting a bit of a shiny look to it, but we just need to actually add our image to this to finish off our gun. In the base color, what we're going to do, we're going to use an image texture. Oh, we already got a color attached to that one. Or did I not join these on earlier on? Let's just join these on. Join, join. Right, so everything's joined together. Just get rid of these two. Right, so we're going to add the image texture that we had. Right, so we've got that. We've got a bit of metallic. Let's just add it up again. Start again. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of reflection on it. And we'll take the roughness down. That's it. So it's now actually reflecting our HDRI, and all we need to do now is add our texture. I'm just going to move my gun just to make sure everything's attached, and of course it isn't. Control Z will put it back into the position, and just join these all together. Just that little rope ring that's not joined as well. So we've got them all joined together, and we're going to make our image texture. So going to the base color here, and we're going to go into environment texture, and then we're going to, we're not going to go on environment texture. We're going to go on image texture, and we're going to open our image. So the image that we actually use to make this is the ray gun that I created, ray gun BTC, and as you can see, that looks absolutely rubbish, but you've got the actual, it's parts of the image are actually attached to the ray gun, so we just need to match these up. So let's go on UV editing, and as you can see, we've got lots and lots of rings and things, and if we select all, you can see it becomes a very dense mesh. So zoom in on this in this window, and what we're going to do is press the U key, and we're going to do a thing called project from view. And as you can see, our gun is now there. So I'm just going to select our gun, select everything, and then scale it up so it matches our shape. Using that top ring as my guide. So that's the top ring up there, and I'm just using that as my guide. So just move it into place like that. Scale on the X across our screen, and I'm just matching it up the best I can to our image like that. And then if we actually look in render mode here, as you can see, we've created a low polygon with all the detail of our images. And I think as you can see, it's very, very realistic and good. You might have to tweak little bits on your actual items, but that's quite easy to do. See, they've got a bit of bleeding out there on the actual. Then again, I think that looks quite good actually, so I'm just going to leave it. But all the actual finer detail is now transferred onto your gun with very little work from yourself on texturing. Voila.
And don't forget, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing.